102 miles into the race, Stanley's video camera records a milestone event. Five hours after leaving the starting line, Stanley now leads the pack, and just 5 robots remain on the course. To finish, they must wind through a treacherous mountain pass, and Stanley must now make life or death decisions. Somehow, Highlander has managed to reach the summit of the pass, but the gimbal is turned sideways and appears to be dead. Without its secret weapon, it must rely on short-range lasers and GPS to avoid disaster. Right behind Highlander, Sandstorm is in good shape, but driving slowly, according to plan. A blue dot appears in the distance. After driving 6 hours and 53 minutes at an average speed of 19 miles an hour, Stanley is about to become the first vehicle in history to drive 132 miles by itself.
Would like to introduce Sebastian Thurn, the new leader of SAIL and the proprietor of Stanley. Thank
you. Welcome to SAIL. Welcome back home.
Yes.
It's you heroes that make possible what we have today here at Stanford. I'm extremely delighted to welcome you. You were doing fantastic work in laying the groundwork of computer science, artificial intelligence, long before I was even leaving kindergarten and then high school and so on. And when I grew up in computer science, it would be your textbooks I would read and your papers that would shape my mind about AI and make me get excited about it. So I'm extremely delighted. Let me just grab a random microphone. Let me try over again. I'm extremely delighted to welcome you here. Back to Stanford. As you'll find, the place looks a little bit different. We downgraded from the nice place in Astradero to campus. But we were very, very vibrant today. We are a very active lab, and we keep up your tradition of doing top-notch research that influences the world. At least we're trying to. We're not as successful as you were, but we're also younger, so we still have a couple of years to prove our value. But I'm extremely delighted to be hosting, together with Raj and Les, who did a fantastic job organizing it, and Suvan over there, today's event. And I welcome you so much back to campus. Our doors are open to you every single day. Every time you want to come by and talk to us and see what we're doing and get a demonstration, you're most welcome. But it's great to have you all here today. Thanks for coming. I want to spend a few minutes going over some of the things going on in SAIL today. You all shaped the lab, but when you left, the lab wasn't entirely over. I guess it's disappeared for a while and was rebuilt in around 2003 when I joined Stanford. Before it was called Robotics Lab for a while, and we had a Knowledge Systems Lab, and we had a heuristic programming project. And they all kind of fused together to form the new SAIL. So I want to tell you some of the things going on right now in the new SAIL that's going on today. And I have a few slides to show you those before I give medals to people. Let me just see if this works. Yes. So we are, oh my God, I have to hit the button. Not very powerful and proficient, I can tell you. 15 professors in total, growing. And if you put this into perspective, these are mostly computer science professors. Computer science itself has about 34 professors. So we are about almost half of computer science, certainly more than a third of computer science today. And that speaks for the broad impact that artificial intelligence has had on all of computer science, and I would argue all of society. In fact, a number of wonderful things happened in the last even 10 years in the lab that really made this impact very, very profound. So we have about, I guess, a third of the students in the department. And we are a first-class citizen right now with really some of the most strongest recent hires in this field. We just had a retreat. This is the current crowd. You can see there's lots of girls, but we put them on the first row, I should say. It's still heavily male-dominated, unfortunately. But we all went to Santa Cruz. Ed Feigenbaum was there, and Nilsen, a number of other wonderful people, and of course all the young folks. And we spent a couple of days thinking about the future of artificial intelligence and the Turing test. And we had Jeff Hawkins as a speaker, who has written this wonderful book on neuroscience and how neuroscience might inform artificial intelligence. So there's a set of great challenges ahead of us that we're taking on with these wonderful students. I have a few slides giving you some highlights of what's happening in the lab, and it's not inclusive of everybody, because 15 professors would take me about 15 hours to talk about them and their great achievements. So I'm going to just show you some samples, and I'm going to start with my colleague Andrew Ng, whose two great graduate students and former graduate students, Peter Abel and Adam Coates, are here somewhere, right over there. Peter is now professor at UC Berkeley, and Adam will soon be professor somewhere. We don't know where yet, after his graduation. And Andrew Ng is a recent, man, it's already 7 years ago. He's tenured now. A recent hire, I was about to say, out of Berkeley and before Carnegie Mellon, doing really fantastic work transforming the field of robotics in a way that is really, really exciting, okay? And it's really profoundly impacted all of robotics control. And I'll show you a video. Well, this is one of his vehicles. Let me skip over this. Here's a video of the type work that Peter did in his thesis and Adam together in making autonomous RC helicopters fly like no helicopter has flown before. We don't have people inside. No dogs were harmed in this experiment. It's completely peaceful, and it contributes to global warming. It's a gasoline-powered helicopter. What is interesting about this is not that gravity disappeared, obviously. But what's interesting about it is that it took people like Peter and Adam and Andrew just a couple of days to write software for these devices. And there is a paradigm shift that they have ignited and is now taking over the nation of robotics that changes from mathematical modeling, the way we've or you've probably learned it in school, all the way to machine learning, where instead of writing down the dynamics equations of a helicopter, you let a human pilot fly the helicopter for a few minutes. You meticulously record, of course, with a computer, the state of the vehicle at any point in time, the controls asserted by the human pilot, and the state of the vehicle a tenth of a second later. And then with that, you learn a model of how the helicopter flies, or the helicopter dynamics, from data, from massive data. It's machine learning. And with this model, you can then tune, using, of course, a computer, and find the optimal control software that can fly these helicopters. This loop of flying the helicopter for maybe 10 minutes and then learning what the optimal controller is allows you to write software like these in a couple of days. Is that correct, Peter?
I would say once the software is written, we can do new maneuvers in order of 20 minutes.
In 20 minutes. So what used to take our grad students live in the thesis to do one maneuver now takes Peter 20 minutes, so he could probably write a thesis every week. But, if you put this in diagrams, I'm not going to bore you too much with these, but it's really a transformation going on that I believe is going to impact the field of computer science, possibly the same way that some of your great inventions that you're standing and representing here in this room have really transformed society as the test of time moves on. So here's one of his first examples. Sounds like a lawnmower. It's the first ever inverted flight of an RC helicopter autonomously. In fact, the first autonomous flight helicopter inverted ever. And I asked Endo at the time, what is this good for? And he told me, oh, for cutting your lawn. No, it's a clearly utility in our research. Shading, yeah. These guys are dangerous. Can't even see them. Can lose all your fingers. So this is my favorite maneuver, and I think Adam and Peter will say a few more words to it. This is called chaos. It just proves that on Stanford's campus, gravity does not exist. You can only find out where it's down when you look at the trees. It's two independent rolls, completely independent rotations. I think human pilots can't fly this specific maneuver with this precision and this independence. Is that correct? So that's an example. And the reason why I want to tell you this is I want you to leave not just with the feeling that you met each other again after all these years, but also that the legacy you created actually really lives on and leads to new inventions and new insights into science and engineering and AI that are really exciting. The second one, we're going to see David Stavens and Henrik Dalkamp already smiling, and Mike Montemerlo and Mike Montemerlo's wife, Rosemary M. Montemerlo, and their little kid in the back row, all contribute to this, including Rosemary. Like me, she would get pizza for the team and assist with all kinds of wonderful things. Has to do with an episode that you just saw a video of in the beginning. And that episode received a lot of public attention, possibly too much so, given that we were lucky to win it. But it really stands for a whole era in robotics and robotics attempt to really innovate something fundamentally new. This is one of my favorite slides looking at really past big competitions. There's 4 really big ones and one really small one that really shaped society, be it the race to the South Pole or the first flight across the Atlantic or the balloon around the world. Spaceship One most recently by Burt Rutan flying into space twice within 2 weeks using a commercial platform. The DARPA Grand Challenge was thought to be too hard for anybody to do. In fact, DARPA had spent about $500 million on research funding to build self-driving cars and had failed utterly. Every team that got money for them would go maybe 2, 3, 4 miles and then crash. And instead of producing the technology of autonomous cars, would produce a stack of papers that they would hand back to the government as a report why they needed more money. So DARPA, as most of you might know, issued in 2003 a competition with $1 million prize money to build a robotic car that could drive itself without any human in the loop from Los Angeles to Las Vegas. Later on, they cut down from Barstow to Primm. Just too many kids playing in Los Angeles was kind of too dangerous. And they chose a route through the desert for these cars. Carnegie Mellon, which of course I used to work at, and Raj, of course, is I think Carnegie Mellon's godfather at this point, did fantastically well in year 1, but didn't solve the challenge. And we had the pleasure to compete with them in year 2, and by pure coincidence or accident to win, actually, which was a complete random decision. You've seen the movie. Les showed it in the beginning. I'm not going to show it again. But it was a grueling race of building cars that could really go where no car had gone before. The capability required from robotic vehicle was immense. You had to send it down 100 miles, 140 miles on a course that wasn't paved, that had ruts and berms and cliffs and all kinds of other things. And Stanley emerged as the first vehicle to ever win DARPA Grand Challenge, won us, in this case, $2 million of research funds, which we still have. And it landed itself as a place in the Smithsonian Museum, National Museum of American History. So if you ever go to Washington and hang out in the mall, stop by in the first floor. This must be my cell phone. First floor of the National Museum of American History. There's a whole room dedicated to Stanley, the robot. Right next to it is the Cal motorcycle that is also very famous, that fell over a couple of times. Very famous for falling over. So that's one of the most visible events in recent history of SAIL. In fact, Wired magazine ranked the 50 most important robots ever built or designed. Some are fiction robots, some are real machines. Stanley actually ended up as number 1, probably because they just happened to write an article about Stanley at the time, to be honest. And they're San Francisco based, and the writer's a good friend of mine. But leave these titles aside. Leaving all these details aside, what's remarkable that among the first 10 robots, there's actually 3 Stanford A.I. robots, including Shaky and the Stanford cart that was conceived and built here by Hans Moravec and others in SAIL. So if you ask yourself about impact, Yes, Astro Boy has higher impact than the Stanford card, but it's still an amazing legacy that was created in SAIL at the time you were here and doing your amazing work. This is some of the more recent work, just one video of showing you what kind of happens when Endo and I collaborate, and his students and my students. This is the way we park now. It turns out I need more research funds for new tires than graduate student support. And we also found that it's a good way to park in, but not to park out and park. A few other examples, and I'm not going to cover every faculty member. In fact, I want to apologize to Osama, who's here, whom I won't cover, unfortunately. Sorry for that. But some really amazing inventions, just one out of many coming out of Jean-Claude's lab, is a surgical robotic that helps you radiating tumors. It was actually the first program to ever write how to do motion planning for administering radioactive radiation into a tumor to kill it without or minimally invading the surrounding tissue. And this has been used hundreds of thousands of patients so far, and it's really an important achievement. Jean-Claude is an avid climber. He spends half his time climbing mountains, the other half building robots that climb mountains. He got so inspired by robots to climb mountains that he made it his main research topic and builds these machines now that will at some point replace him in the pleasure of mountain climbing. Like this one over here, to build together with JPL, and this is a little video of a robot. With this goes actually some really interesting theory. Jean-Claude has been the professor who wrote the decisive book on robot motion planning that's often called the Bible, and it came out of Stanford. In fact, at the time it was called the Robotics Lab, but now it's SAIL. So together with Osama Khatib, who invented the potential field and other really important methodologies in robotics, it's kind of clear that in this field of motion planning and actuation, the genes that really spread into the field of robotics come out of SAIL, the younger SAIL. Some more examples. This is my friend Ken, who is, I think, also somewhere here. Not yet? Oh, Ken, yes, absolutely. Ken is not just an avid flute player, but also the inventor, I think, of the second robotic hand ever. Is that correct?
Well, there are many who caught it before me, and Utah hand at the same time.
I thought the MIT Utah hand was slightly before, and there was a second, or?
We were neck and neck.
Neck and neck, okay, good. But his work on mechanism really has influenced, for decades now, the field of robotic actuation, all the way to companies like Intuitive Surgical that uses insights. This is a recent video that he gave us for our retreat on a new set of actuators that are actually passive, but use air and magnets to change their stiffness and allow you to build robotic devices that are minimally dangerous if you use them, for example, for surgery, but can still change their shape and stiffness and form to achieve certain surgical results. And I think Ken will receive a medal today later on and give it a chance to say a few more words about his research and why we love him so much as a colleague. Daphne, there's no presentation you could give about SAIL without mentioning the word Daphne. Daphne is just one of the most amazing people. She's actually the person who got me here from Carnegie Mellon. It was working with her made me believe it would be really great to be at Stanford. So I applied for a job here and then came here. She's just finished her book, Probabilistic Graphical Models. It's 1,200 pages. She's an ingenious researcher, but not a good book writer, turns out. It took her 10 years to write, and it's twice as long as it should be. But what's behind this actually is really the stage for an entire new wave of probabilistic AI. Probabilistic AI at your times was probably frowned upon. There was a guy named Judea Pearl at UCLA who was talking about it, but most people refuted him as being too unlogical and need too many numbers and too subjective, or whatever you call it. But as Nils, of course, can attest to, since the field of probabilities has taken over in a firestorm, the field of artificial intelligence, and what Daphne has done and stands out more than anything else is really fuse the idea of logical thinking, logical inference, with the idea of probabilities and uncertainty. And she created a whole set of new algorithms and paradigms that thousands and thousands of AI researchers today use, and has really intellectually changed the field of artificial intelligence. All the way to my own work. I'm actually one of the, I guess, beneficiaries of this work, in that I use the same methods for robotics these days. So it's really, really interesting to see how intellectually we have helped grow the field. This is not just my friend Osama over here, waving in front of a camera, but this is work that Daphne pursues, together with several students and me, on motion tracking. I have an example movie. It hopefully plays. In fact, maybe we could even put sound on. This movie sometimes plays and sometimes doesn't. It was playing something less than a second ago.
We present a method named SCAPE for simultaneously modeling the space of all human shapes and poses. Further, we demonstrate the method's usefulness for both shape completion and animation. The model is computed from an example set of surface meshes. We require only a limited set of training data. Examples of pose variation from a single subject, and examples of the shape variation between subjects. The resulting model can represent both articulated motion and, importantly, the non-rigid muscle deformations required for natural appearance in a wide variety of poses. The model can also represent a wide variety of different body shapes, spanning both men and women. Because SCAPE incorporates both shape and pose, we can jointly vary both shape and pose to create people who never existed in poses that were never observed. We demonstrate the use of this model first for shape completion of scanned meshes. Even when a subject has only been partially observed, we can use the model to estimate a complete surface. In this case, the entire front half of the subject has been synthesized. Note that the synthesized data both conforms to the individual subject's specific shape and faithfully represents the non-rigid muscle deformations associated with the specific pose. Mesh completion is possible even when neither the person nor the pose exists in the original training set. None of the women in our example set look similar to the woman in this sequence. Shape completion can also be used to synthesize complete animated surface meshes, starting from a single scanned mesh of an actor and a time series of motion capture markers. We can treat the markers themselves as a very sparse sampling of surface geometry and complete the surface which best fits the available data at each point in time. Using this method, animated surface models for a wide variety of motions can be created with relative ease. In addition, the target identity of the surface model can easily be changed simply by replacing the subject portion of our factorized model with a different vector. The new identity need not be present in our training set, nor even correspond to a real person. An artist is free to alter the identity arbitrarily.
I like this video because it's not just an example of, didn't explain it, but it's an example of probabilistic inference.
We present a method named SCAPE for simultaneous...
Okay. And it plays autonomously, obviously. Yep. But it also draws the ties to another field, computer graphics, which happens to be world-class at Stanford, and shows how interactive SAIL has become. We actually now meddle with all kinds of different departments on campus, and we become kind of an intellectual home for many, many new methods that really influence other sciences. The last example I give you is one of those. It's biology. Biology has transformed tremendously in the last 5 years or 10 years. From a observational and modeling driven scientific discipline where we basically observe, for example, animal behavior, to a data-driven discipline where we create enormous amounts of data and use basically AI technology to analyze this data. So without AI and on this campus SAIL, there would have not been a revolution in biology and medicine alike. We have a whole number of professors in this space that work at different levels of abstraction trying to understand how to bring AI technology, 2 o'clock, trying to bring AI technology into biology and medicine and life sciences. There's a whole center called BioX on campus that is really dedicated to interdisciplinary work, and the algorithmic side, the computer science side, is supplied largely by SAIL. I give you just one example. If you remember molecular, it's not working, molecular biology 101, where we of course have these double helixes that encode digitally our genetic information. This information is encoded in terms of genes, and often also called modules for groups of genes, transcribed using messenger RNA. this ribonucleic acid, I guess, and then turn into proteins that regulate the biophysics of the cell itself. These mechanisms are not just understood from a mechanistics and modeling side, but also from a massive data side these days. One of my colleagues, Serafim Batzuglu, who joined about 5-6 years ago, just got tenure, has used sequences of genomes of different species that largely overlap to understand what genes coexist in what shape among different species, and used basically hidden Markov model techniques, some of the stuff that you worked on and invented, to really make this alignment possible, but in very, very large scale. So here's a typical diagram of gene alignment for different genes and across different species that was published by him in Nature in 2004. And out of this emerges an entire new science of how to understand the history of genetic material, meaning us and animals and so on, but also an understanding of what changed over time and what kind of genes might contribute to what types of diseases. I think this is the birthing of a technology that's not just going on at Stanford, but worldwide, to use these data-driven techniques and AI techniques to really understand how to make personalized medicine happening and how to treat diseases you could never treat before and really understand them better. So this is one of his favorite slides to show me that he did it for three animals in the beginning, was mice, rats, and humans. I don't know why he chose these animals. He could have chosen cabbage instead. But there's more examples coming right now. We're now sequencing DNA. And we all know that the costs for sequences are going down. There's no companies that promise to sequence your DNA for a few $100s a person. And that makes it possible to apply these kind of techniques to a very, very large corpus of data and really understand much more about our basic building blocks as human beings. It is a 5-year-old slide, yes, thank you. It is true. It's correct, we're over here.
Yeah, so we're actually further down than that. It's about $10,000 now.
It's right here?
Alien sequencing.
Roughly here?
Depending whether you mean a new mammal or whether you mean a human. Humans are cheaper
Humans
because
are
we've
cheaper,
already got
yeah.
the reference sequence.
Yeah. There's a couple of garage firms now, that startup firms that are coming up to promise it for about $1,000 a person or less. And it'd be really interesting if we can afford sequencing ourselves and put ourselves in a database to understand all this. That's amazing opportunities. But thanks for pointing this out. That's correct, yes. I got the slides about 5 years ago. This specific slide. What else? Before I close, it's interesting to see what's happening to computer science at large and Stanford and Sale and how this data of evolution that encompasses robotics as manifests in Andrew's work and Peter and Adam, DARPA Grand Challenge, the work that you see in biology between Daphne and Seraphim and Gil and another other faculty is really changing the world. I couldn't finish this presentation without another example of data-driven, world-changing work coming out of Stanford, not directly out of Sale, but close enough. In fact, Terry Winograd, who is also here, I believe, he just left, was the key advisor of 2 graduate students who never finished, unfortunately. And one is still talking about finishing, to start a little startup in the basement of Gates called Google. And they had this wonderful insight together with Rajiv Motwani, who is not with us anymore, unfortunately, to really understand that large amounts of online data and labeled web pages that link to each other could be mined to help you search web pages. So they started out as students here in the computer science department, working with Terry, but doing, by all means, artificial intelligence. And then really built the first working search engine. At the time, it was by far the best. And then they decided not to graduate, but instead to start their company, and they still haven't graduated, which is sad. But they created a $50 billion venture, and it's fair to say that they really influenced the world, and they keep influencing the world. If you spend time at Google, you realize that Google is a machine learning company. All this secrets is basically looking at massive amounts of data. Just to give you 2 more examples, Google has the world's best language translation technology for most languages right now. And they're being constructed not by linguists sitting there and trying to understand language, but they're being constructed largely by finding large corpuses of documents that were translated by humans, like journalists, for example, and matching them back and learning from that the type grammars that govern the translation of one language to another. In fact, the joke goes that some of the engineers that build the world's best language translation systems don't even speak those languages. They just understand how to match patterns. One other thing that came out of this more recently, in fact, Hendrik was involved, who sits back there, if this movie plays, please play, has been the world's largest photographic image database called Street View. Your house has been photographed. Okay, so if you go to maps.google.com and pinch in your address, your house is going to be in there, is my bet. If not, then let me know. It'd be very rare. Either you have a very secluded property, or you have a private driveway, or you live in Middle East. Wouldn't have you? But let's see. Henrik Dahlkamp was one of the students involved in building up a fleet of vehicles like this one over here, and then driving all of the United States to basically photograph everything. And what's behind this is a revolution that's ongoing to build these massively large data sets and mine these massively large data sets and really change how any aspect of science work. I think these are the genes, the DNA of SAIL today. We really would like to understand what to do with large amounts of data. We have a lot of work underway in understanding human intelligence using massive amounts of data. Andrew runs a project called STARE for Stanford A.I. Robot Project that really tries to understand how we can generate human-level AI through massive amounts of data and machine learning. This is basically the heritage that you left behind and we are trying to live up to and live on.